In this week's video, I'm sharing how I paint an apple using basic watercolor techniques. I'm going to be working wet on wet, wet on dry, and then I have a scumbling technique that I'd like to show you. I'm going to be using cotton watercolor paper to draw on, and I have a photograph of a MacIntosh apple that I'm going to leave in the left-hand corner for reference. Apples are a great subject to use. They're just a basic shape where you can concentrate more on the painting and less on the drawing. This is Blick watercolor paper that I'm drawing on. I'm using an HB pencil, and once I'm done laying out the apple itself, I'm going to use a kneaded eraser to pick up any extra graphite. I'll link all the supplies that I'm using in the description below. To start, cover the entire apple, except for the stem itself, with water. This is going to be your first wash. So when you're laying down your first layers of color, they're not going to be very dark. The first color I'm going to be using is green, and I mix this using a mixture of lemon yellow and Prussian blue. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to drop it into the water and let the water do the work for me. I use a damp brush to move the paint around on the apple. A damp brush allows you to soak up extra paint and move the paint around easily. So what you can't see is that I have a paper towel off screen. And at this point, you don't want a lot of water in your brush. Just let the water on the paper do most of the work for you. The next color I'm going to be adding is Pyrrol Red. It's going to be a very thin consistency, tea consistency. These thin coats of paint will allow us to build up layers of color. And once again, with a damp brush, I'm just gently moving the paint around, blending it into the green, trying to keep any hard edges from forming. So I'm just gently brushing. I'm adding a slightly more concentrated red paint here. This is where the apple has more color. Once I get all the blending done and I get all the colors down, I'm going to let this dry for, I don't know, 20 minutes or so. Now that the paper is dry, I'm going to be putting down a very light, even layer of water just where I'm going to be working. What I'm trying to do is to prevent any hard edges. So I still have a very damp brush, and my consistency on my paint is still very thin, but I'm starting to build up very slowly the next layer. I want to define the stem at this point, so I'm dropping in some green paint, and then I'm just going to gently move it around. The next color I'm going to be adding is Scarlet Pyrrol. This side of the apple is not as red as the other side. It's kind of got flecks of green mixed up with a very light red. So what I want to do is I want to keep it as warm as possible. So I'm going to be adding this color as my first layer, and then I'll build up from there. Now I'm going to be adding some of the red in for this side of the apple. Note that the consistency is a little thicker here, and I'm just going to, as always, blend very gently with a damp brush. Also note here, this paper is damp. It's not dry, it's slightly damp, which makes it easier for me to move the paint about and keep it even and have a soft feel to it. I'm going to be adding the second layer of green paint now, and it's on, once again, damp paper. With a damp brush, I'm just going to be moving it around. And you can see I'm just building successive layers, one on top of the other, letting it dry slightly, and then moving on to the next layer. As I build up each layer, what I do is I keep a very light film of water. This lets me keep things smooth. I'm trying to keep it as soft as possible. To add some texture to the apple, I'm using a slightly dry brush and I'm dropping on here some concentrated green. And then I'm using a paper towel and I'm going to be removing some of the paint. I'm patting it so that it's not evenly removed. Now the apple itself is pretty much dry. So what I'm doing is this is the third layer I'm putting on, and this is wet on dry. And with this technique, you can get a lot more detail done. This is what I call scumbling. You can see me moving about in a more jagged motion. The skin color on this apple is not all one, just one smooth color. This is allowing me to move the color variations around the apple. Sometimes I use dots for coloring, sometimes I just use this jagged motion. And then once I'm done with all this, I'll just lay over a light coat of water to blend everything together. This is milk consistency, dropping this in, getting it as dark as possible. Nice vibrant red. I'm locating the stem now. I'm just touching it with some ochre. This is a little hint of alizarin crimson right here. I'm trying to give the apple a little bit of body where the apple actually just turns as it goes down into the stem. This is Dioxazine purple, and this is the darker side of the apple. So I'm going to be adding this. This is going to give it some depth. I did put a light coat of water down first on this because I wanted to keep it as smooth transition as possible. And then, of course, I used my damp brush to gently blend it in. And here, once again, I'm going to be using that scumbling effect. I'm just going to be adding a little texture here and there. I'll put the dots down, then I'll go in later and I'll gently wash over them with a light coat of water just to soften the effect slightly. And when you get done, it kind of gives you the effect of the skin on the apple because it's not a smooth skin. It's got different variations of color. My name is Holly. Thanks so much for watching. If you'd like to see more watercolor tutorials, please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.